All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome for those of you who are watching us live and to those of you who are watching this after the live, whether it recorded. We're really grateful for you for taking the time to be present with us in whatever form that means for you. And I'm here with Anne. I'm going to, in a moment, have her introduce herself, talk a little bit about what she does, and then we're just going to do like we always do, we'll have a conversation and see where it goes. We had a few brief moments prior to hopping on live to talk, and we already started to kind of flow into the conversation. And I'm like, oh, we got to go live. So we've got some places where I think we're going to pick up from. But with that said, Anne, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody? Tell them who you are and what you do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Deb, for having me on. I just love our conversations. Every time we sit and chat, whether it's in person or over Zoom, they're just always so delightful. So I appreciate this time with you.
Thank you.
My name is Anne Chikahisa, and I'm a jewelry designer. And I create talisman jewelry. That's my signature product. I create talisman jewelry to help women connect with their power. And I'm a metalsmith, so I design and create it in my studio here in Seattle. And before that, I was a corporate girl, and I ditched that career, walked away from a pretty lucrative job, and decided to follow my passion. So here I am, 14 years later, running this small business, and it's been a journey. I can't say that it's all been great. It's been up and down, but it's been a wonderful experience, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yeah, wonderful. And I didn't intentionally. I wore one of my mixed metal. This isn't one of yours, but
Oh,
it's interesting because when I think of you, whenever I see silver and gold together, I think of you because of the conversation that we'd had about mixed metals. And I think I should have thought of it. I could have pulled up some images of people, but obviously at the end we'll have people
okay.
can get in
I
touch with
should.
you and they can go and check out your stuff because I think.
Yeah, I
Do you have
usually
anything with
wear.
you? You
I
have it with
do.
you?
I can run in the bathroom. I always forget. I forgot to put it on. I can
That's
go
okay.
run. Let me run back and get it.
All
I'll
right.
be right back.
All right. Well, so while Anne is running to get the that whatever item that she's going to show you all, I will just say that she has, she's variety of different products and things that she creates, but in each piece, she a lot of love pours into it, and you can kind of feel that in how she selects the different pieces. There are opportunities for potential buyers to weigh in on what they might like, what are some of their favorite things, and that's what produces it. So if you want to hold that up for people to see, go for it.
That's so nice of you to say that. So, about the love, because it is handmade. So these are my talismans. So I don't know if you can see them. And I always go the wrong way on Zoom. So each one is a little different. This long one here is strength, and it's got a black diamond on it. And it really is, it was inspired by kind of a warrior attitude. So I take a simple word and then I do an artistic interpretation of it. And like this is wisdom, and it's got a freshwater, whoops, sorry, it's really bouncing. It's got a freshwater pearl on it, and it's got little holes in there, and it's kind of like a scoop. So for me, wisdom was about sifting through things and finding those nuggets that have meaning to you and carrying it through. And of course, the pearl is always thought of as a symbol of wisdom. And this is healing. And to me, the sun is a healing energy, whether it's an emotional healing I want or a physical healing. When I'm not feeling well, I always turn to the sun and feeling those rays. So I made a kind of I don't know, a random looking sun. These are the rays, and it spins, has a lot of movement on it. And this was inspired because it was during COVID, and I felt like people really needed some healing energy. And so then I just, and I, like you said, I do a lot of mixed metals. I love doing oxidized silver with either bronze or gold. And so my little connector here is in a 14 karat gold plate. And then you just wear the chain. So they're meant that you can pick your talisman specific to maybe something you're trying to harness in your life or something that you're trying to overcome. Sometimes people buy them for friends. So this is what it looks like. Sometimes people buy it for friends to as a gift. Um, Maybe they're going through a difficult time, like cancer treatment or divorce, so they send them a healing, or they want them to feel really strong and powerful. They'll go buy a strength. My friend was going through a divorce, and I sent her a strength one because she just needed a little bit of
Right.
warrior attitude to get through the tough parts of it. So that's what I
Yeah,
did.
it's the reminder, right? I mean, like, and I'm a
Yes.
big, like, I always like to surround myself. I have like these little, like, I have a little stone near me that says
Hmm.
hope. Things around us that have messages and that have special meaning to us, that give us those reminders when sometimes the messages in our heads are not always on point because we're exhausted or we're
Exactly.
stressed, right? So if you've got something that you can
Yeah.
just remember, and I think we talked a little bit about it, but you described it in a different way from previous conversations about how you take a word and then you create an artistic representation of it. So when people are receiving it, they're what they're getting from you is you really putting your love, right? Your love, your thoughts into to a specific word that you want to have meaning for them. And so, you can buy certainly for people jewelry that has a word, right? It could be a word
Right.
wisdom. What they're getting is your artistic representation of that word.
Exactly.
And then
Exactly.
I'm a tactile person. Like I do this a
Yes.
lot anyway.
Me too.
And I've realized I came across, not realized, but I came across an article. I don't know, maybe it was a few weeks ago. It's kind of insignificant, the timing, but it was talking about, and there was a phrase that they used for a lot of people are now buying jewelry specifically for the purpose of being able to hold on to it and rub it and I, you notice people doing that all the time. And my daughter shares that habit as well. Like when I'm thinking, I usually go to whatever's around my neck and I start kind of holding on to it. So you've got the additional, first of all, it's because of the tactile, right? Like there's all
Hmm.
kinds of different patterns and
And
different things that you're
textures.
going to be,
Yes, it's very
yeah,
textured.
textures.
Yeah.
That's the word I was looking for,
Hmm.
textures. And then when you're feeling those textures, right? So like, let's say you're holding on to the one that represents strength and you're
Hmm.
feeling it and you're
Hmm.
thinking of you putting your thoughts of strength into that. So it's a reminder in addition to just having the actual tactile, physical, soothing
Right.
quality to it. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and the other thing about the word talisman is an ancient uh, token that has been practiced for centuries, and the intention is the maker puts the energy of whatever they want the meaning to be. So, like, let's say this is strength. I want someone to feel powerful and have that warrior attitude. So, when you're making it, that energy is being transferred from the maker to the wearer. And that's what makes a talisman really special. Whereas, like, a charm is something that is more cute and that it doesn't have quite the depth of the intention around the word a talisman does. And that's why I chose it to be a talisman versus a charm because of the depth of the meaning and the intention that goes from the maker to the wearer.
It just reminded me of something. It's going to sound completely unrelated, but I promise it will loop back to this. But with the way that you were saying that, so different you go to different you visit different places like around the world, right? And we'll talk about how were the people, meaning like the people that you encountered in the specific geographic region, were they friendly? Did they, like, is that particular country welcoming to you and those types of
Right.
things? And I remember when I was in Hawaii, um somebody I remember we were like on the highway or something and somebody had like rolled down their window and like just struck up a conversation, but like we're like in the street like waiting at a traffic light and this person's like having a conversation with me, their dog was there. And I was saying to somebody when I came back and they were asking like, "Oh, what was your interaction with people like in Hawaii?" Now obviously some of it is very touristy, so there's a different, but I said what was interesting is I said, you can encounter really friendly people in your life who say all the things that are, they ask those questions and they say, "I hope you're having a good day." I said, but my impression was when somebody in Hawaii said to me, "I hope you're having a good day," they were saying, like, "I hope your entire being is well right now." And when you were talking about that, I think like that's the thing. It's like it's not just the message, it's the saying, I'm at this moment knowing your friend was going through a divorce. I know that you're feeling sadness. I feel empathy for your sadness. And so I want for you to feel strength. So you're, like you said, it's not just the message, but it's your love, your care for that particular person. And it reminded me of my thoughts when I was in Hawaii, the difference
Oh, that's
between
so
somebody just saying,
beautiful.
"I hope you have a good day," and somebody saying it, and like they legitimately are hoping for your well-being through and through.
Oh, that's so
And
beautiful.
yeah, yeah. So
It's
that's
so
why I was like,
beautiful.
you're gonna be like, why are we talking about Hawaii right now? But I'm glad that I'm
No,
glad you stuck it out with me.
no, I totally get that. There's something culturally about Hawaii too, where it's a holistic approach. especially the locals who've lived there their entire life. It's the culture there of caring for the planet, caring for animals, caring for each other that is so different
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
here.
Full.
So,
Yeah. You're present. You're very much present.
mhm,
So this links to what we were talking about right before when we first hopped on. And I think and this is everybody. So I don't want this to come across when I say this because I'm not anti social media. I don't dislike technology. I understand a lot of the different things that have happened in our culture and the benefits of them. But we do get sometimes caught up into all of these cultural elements that tell us we need to be doing, we need to be getting, and they cause us to rush through the parts of the day that are already the day, right? Like we're going through them because we want to get to the day. The day is
right.
there, right? Brushing your teeth is your day. That's part of your day. Instead of like, well, I'm going to do my morning routine to get to the day ahead. And so I had shared that, one of the things I started realizing I was doing, that further and further I got into really this transition, right? My entrepreneurial journey has been extensive, has been ongoing, but, the course of the last 2 years, really trying to hone in on some specific things and build awareness in certain areas. There is a lot of you got to keep going. You got to keep going. You got to get
Right.
things done. And so I would be like waking up in the morning and getting, maybe not even getting my breakfast and reaching for my phone just to kind of check my calendar, what's going on for the day. Is there any, emails that I missed that I need to be aware of? And found that it was not even allowing me a moment to just be present. And so I was like, I'd always kind of done prayerfulness and meditation type things, but I was like, I'm going to now, it's got to be every day. And I can't touch my phone. Can't, like, I made this,
Packed
proclamation. You
with
cannot touch
yourself.
your
Yep.
phone, Deb, until you have done this. Great. Okay. So, and I was really like, I do this, I would like close my eyes and I could feel all this presence and just really be filled with that. But I started to realize that there were times, specific days obviously were worse than others, but where I was like, I was starting to make it just one of those pegs, like the brushing the teeth, the thing, like I got to get through this meditation so I can get to my phone, so I can check these things that might be happening. And had to really settle myself and be like, if the reason you're saying you're done is because you're antsy to get on your phone, then you're not done. And you need to get
Right.
to the place of calm first. But it's really hard.
It is really
And for
hard.
the audience who wasn't with us, this all started because I thought that Anne froze because she was sitting so still that I thought the internet had froze. And I was like, that's impressive. That's got to be like years of meditation. And she shared, she said, yes, I do. And so that's how we were kind of talking about that it's very mindfulness, meditative mindfulness, is you really have to put yourself in that position and really make that decision that you're going to do it. It's not always going to feel very natural.
Well,
And maybe you could
and I
talk a
think,
little bit about, yeah.
yeah, and I think your point was really, really valid, is just that you had said it reminded me that I started doing it not for the purpose of staying calm, that I was rushing through it. And it was a really good lesson. And I think that's part of what meditation gratitude does. It puts those things, those lessons in front of you and forces you to look at them and figure out, well, what does that mean? And how do I interpret that? And how can I take that and make it a lesson in my life to make my life
Mm,
better? Because, the universe throws things
right.
at us. And if you're not paying attention, then you just brush by it and you keep going and it'll keep throwing it back at you. And then you're like, oh, maybe like the 100th time, you're like, oh, that's why that keeps happening,
Right.
you
I'm
know?
rushed. Right. You're right. And you're right. I had said that. And I think that is an important part of that story that I left out, is that I did feel it was a reminder to me of that the things that I think I need to get to are not in control of me. And that I need to let me, my being and my decisions and who I am with purpose in this world, not be about getting to that. And it doesn't mean we're going to disregard it. You can't be like, okay, well, I'm going to sit, if you have the time to, great. But you can't say I'm going to sit for 6 hours and meditate, because like,
That's
you
not
do have to
reality.
balance that, right? We have to integrate the responsibilities that come with whatever our role in life is, and wherever we are we have responsibilities and things, and so we need to integrate that. And so, it's important for us to figure out where it's going to fit and to put it in a place that we are going to be able to be consistent with it, and that we are
Right.
going to be able to benefit from it, right? Because again, if you know you have to get up at a certain time and you've only got 15 minutes in the morning and then you have to do something, you're not going to be able to be present, right? You're going to either have to get up a little earlier or something, but you want to put it in a place where you're going to be able to reap the benefits of calming and cutting yourself slack when you do feel hurried, right? Like, well, forget it, I
Yes.
can't do this. But like,
Yes.
okay, it's all right. You're aware, right? If it's
Yeah.
30 seconds that you had and you got those 30 seconds, like take that. That's important.
Yeah, and it's hard. Some days, like we were talking about earlier, is just some days it's really hard because you have all this like for me, some days I have this frenetic energy and I'm trying to slow down and I'm trying to like calm down and it's hard. It's hard and I just want to keep pushing through. And I think the thing that I learned the most about that is especially in business is like when I first started, I was always doing, 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 doing. Like, like you were talking about, you have the laundry list and you got to check it off and you got to get through the day and you're pushing, pushing, pushing. But what I've learned over the years and since I've been doing more meditation and gratitude is that when you slow down and you don't push and you get in that flow, things work so much easier and you get so much more done. And then you realize what's important and what's not because there's so much noise. Like, I don't know about you, but I can be the girl of the shiny object syndrome where like something pops up and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go do that. Oh, I'm gonna go do that. And then you're like all over the place and your mission of what you needed to get done doesn't happen. And the whole calmingness and trying to quiet has helped me not chase after all those things and to instead of pushing to letting it flow. And that's the biggest thing I've learned about meditation is I'm so much more productive and so much more present when I'm not pushing.
Yeah.
And it makes my
And
life better.
right, right. Well, when we're calmer, but I also find too one of the tricky things for me, like what you're talking about, the shiny objects, like, and I think of it from a creative perspective, right? And we both have, there's stuff that I do that that's business consulting, right? I'm strategizing through stuff and analyzing data, and that's a very specific thing. But then there's also the creative side of me, which the two of them connect because I do my creative side definitely comes in when I'm doing strategy and stuff. But the creative side, the poet, the musician that you almost want to let yourself get distracted by things because you're like kind of letting what's going on around you
Right.
take you in. So you're trying to figure out, how do I balance this? I want to allow myself to be very acutely aware of the piece of dust that's floating in the sunlight, the sound of the bird that's way off in the distance, that slight smell that's reminding me of something from childhood, but I don't even know what it is. Like, part of me wants to be very open to that, so I have to like be very conscious of, like, I'm going to allow myself to be open, but then like make sure that I also can bring myself back from it, right? Because you
Yes.
do get distracted. And
Yes.
so there's that creative distraction. And then, of course, there's the other distraction, which is the responsibility list in our head
Right.
that's going like, get
Right.
this done, get this done,
Right.
get this done.
Right.
Um,
But I think the creative distraction has a different energy to it though, right? I mean, for me, like I call that my creative zen, and being distracted by other things to get me to design something feels
mm,
way different than the shiny object syndrome. Like to me,
mm,
the shiny object syndrome is more frenetic. And it's like, oh my God, I got to do that. Whereas the distraction when I'm creating and the influence of the my surrounding or being inspired by something when I'm just walking out for a walk
right.
is so different. Like it's like
Right.
this kind of energy. And so but you're
You're
right.
right.
It is
You're right. You're right.
but you're right is being open to that creative energy is so important because
Yeah.
it sparks so much and takes you down a path that you maybe never would have thought about.
Yeah, and
So,
you're but yeah, but I like your point because I think, and the more I think about it too, like it is different because it's more awareness, like the being aware of all those things that are going on around you. It's more awareness. I just notice myself sometimes that things get like my wires get tangled up, and I'm not sure, like, am
oh,
I
for
something
sure,
creative happening right now?
for sure.
And then again, I think, and also some of that is probably, childhood impacting my, like, I like to try to create order. So sometimes I'm like, you start to go down that, like, this has to happen. And for me, particularly because I dug into so many things at once and I have no regrets because this was really how I had to, for me, I think this was the natural way that it was going to happen. But I had to start doing things that like I never would have done before, and it's been out of my comfort zone, but in a good way. Like, I would do the laundry, I would bring my clothes upstairs, I would fold them, I would put them away. There was never like they weren't laying flat in a pile. That didn't happen. And lately, there's just not enough time for me to keep things in the same degree of order that I would like to have them in. but I think that's good because it's teaching me that it's okay. Like it's okay that the
Yes.
the stack of clothes, and I was always okay with there being chaos, but to a certain degree, I'm like, okay, well, your clothes are going to get folded and put away. Not for others, but that was like what I put on me. Like you could take me over to your house and your house could be filled with clutter, and I'm like, that's cool, that's your business. Like, but for me, and so that's been helpful to me because it does the same way that when I don't rush from my meditation onto my phone, you remind yourself that like the world didn't fall apart because you didn't put your laundry away, right? Nobody is going to, nothing terrible is going to happen because you don't check that email for 15 more
Right.
minutes.
Right. That's such a good analogy though. Really. Yeah, the folding the laundry. I mean, your laundry's fine. It's
Yeah,
it's not going to get up and walk away, or it's not going to get ruined if you don't fold it then, and if you fold it at
right,
5 o'clock. Yeah,
right.
that's so true.
But let's talk about your creative process. And you were talking about creativity, right? And when you're taking a walk or things like that. And I had my the way that my office is set up. It's kind of in a spot that's not particularly overly quiet. I mean, it has quiet components to it, but there's a lot of things that are going on. And I noticed that I write better when I can take myself like creatively write better when I can take myself away from this space. Like physically, I need to go to a different space, and I haven't been able to do that as much lately. And yesterday I was driving and I had music playing, and I mean I wrote 3 poems in my head, and it was like a two and a
Wow,
half
that's
hour
a
drive. I said to my husband, we have to revisit how I can find quiet
that time.
space. And I'll sit quietly and play music in my where I do all of my consulting work on my computers and stuff, but it doesn't have the same feeling as it had when I was literally just letting my the creative we just talked about, letting my mind wander in a healthy way. I promise I was paying attention to the road at the same time, but um I'm just glad for phone dictation. I was like, "Where's my phone?"
I
I was
know, that's
recording it, but yeah.
amazing.
So I think
Yeah.
for you, right? Is there a process you go through? Is it things kind of come randomly? I know it's a composite for me of different things. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
intentional, sometimes it just pops into my head.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest thing about having a creative business, right? So because I have other things I need to get done, and carving out that creative time is really hard because sometimes I do. I set out like a half a day and I say I'm just going to sit at the bench and be creative, but it feels really forced.
Mm,
So, I do different things. Yoga, when I used to do a lot of yoga, I would get a lot of ideas when I'm doing yoga, or when I'm walking, I get a lot of ideas. So for me, it's like the movement of my body and moving my energy is how I get into that flow of designing. And now I'm just learning that when I'm getting that creative energy or I'm getting that creative spark, then I just got to do it and put everything else aside. Um, and, my design philosophy is based on my Japanese heritage, and it's called wabi-sabi, and it's the beauty of imperfection. And I've taken that philosophy really to become a lifestyle philosophy that I design and I live my life in this way that is, celebrating beauty and imperfection, and that I just have to go with the flow. So, not always striving to have the perfect time to design, or not always striving to have the perfect piece. And it's actually helped my creative process so much more because I'm letting it happen instead of saying, this is what needs to happen. I don't know if that
yeah.
makes sense.
No, it does. It's beautiful. And that's exactly it. So I'm the same way. There are times when I can definitely sit myself down and I can say, I'm going to do a creative brainstorming session and let things go. And it does happen. And but I even find with those, a lot of times what feeds those sessions is that I've been keeping things that pop into my head. I've been writing them down, right? So it'll be a line or a word combination that I just happen to like. So it's already being fed by the stuff that's coming, like you
It's
said,
a starting point.
imperfectly.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. It's like a 3 word, and I'm like, I know this is going to be something, so I hold on to it. And so I think that that's very similar to yours. Rather than trying to take that 3 word phrase in the moment that it hits me and go like, well, now I need to create the whole poem. I let it gel. I let it sit with me, and there'll be times where I'll write something and rewrite something. Not because I'm trying to make it perfect, but almost because I'm like, that wasn't what that was intended for. Like that's a part of something else. I can't force it into this spot just because I want it to have a poem around it. It'll find
right.
its place when it can. And it reminds me
True.
that like when I was little and I would do it, it was almost like I could see the words dancing around in my head. It was this, in this, that there's something happening, and it's such a cool feeling when you're like, I'm about to create
It's
something.
percolating, right?
Yeah, like, yeah, you're like, I'm about to create something. And though it's different because it's words, so I think for you it might be a little harder. Obviously, you can't capture a 3-word phrase, but I'm sure there's times where things pop into your head like bend the metal or straight line or things like that, and you can see it. Do you sketch things beforehand?
I'm not a sketcher. Yeah. It's more of a feeling for me. Like, how do it's a feeling. And I know it's weird because most jewelers sketch, they're very detail oriented, they have sketches. When I do it, it just never feels right to me because I guess maybe because I'm so tactile, I've always been that way. I see things through my hands. So I have to get in there
Mm,
and do it that way. And I do a lot of wax work. So what that means is I there's special wax. Called wax. Lost wax casting is one of my methods. And so it's an old method where you carve something out of wax and then it's put into a plaster of Paris mold and it becomes a negative space. And then you put the metal in there and that's your object. So, like for me, carving in the wax, like I just have to take a chunk of wax and just start playing with it. I don't really know what will happen. Sometimes it's good, lots of times it's really bad, but it's just fun. It's fun to have that freedom to just wing it and let it
now, do
happen.
you heat up the metal? Do you like, how do you bend the stuff so it gets heated
Yeah,
up? I imagine. Yeah.
yeah, it depends on how thick the metal. Like this piece was a flat sheet, and I have little tools. I don't know if you can see, but there's like
Yeah.
it's shaped. And so I have tools that will help me bend the metal. And because the metal's pretty thin, I can just manipulate it with a hammer. But if it was like a 16 gauge piece of silver, I have to heat it up so that it becomes more
Right.
pliable. So yeah, it just depends on
Now, is the
how big
one
the
you're
piece.
wearing, is that your favorite? I'm sure you don't want to pick a favorite, but is that your
Oh, it's like, it's really hard. It's like choosing your favorite child. I'd say strength is one of my favorites. This one, I wear this one a lot, but
yeah.
it just depends on my mood. Lately, I've been wearing
Yeah.
these. I don't know why. It just feels like this is what I need. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think I have like 14 different ones, so I change them up all the time.
Yeah, and again, because it's different, because it's a charm as opposed to something that was created specifically like that. But it's interesting that strength is your favorite one. I have on a very rudimentary chain. I have a little mini hammer. It's a hammer. It's a hammer charm. And I love it because for me, it's just a reminder of we can build and we can break, right? We can break down
Oh,
walls, we can build
that's
up
so
things. So
good.
it's like, so I even have a T-shirt that my family got me. It says my spirit animal is a hammer.
Oh,
Um,
that's so good.
because I just think it's a simple tool, right? It's a very, I mean, at its basis, when you think about early tools, right? Wood, rock, whatever, but it's such a simple tool, and we can do so many things with it, right? You can remove nails, you can put nails in, you can break things, you can. So I just have always thought that it was really fascinating, and then the whole idea behind carpentry, of course, and then add to that there was some carpentry in my family. So, but that I like the idea of the thought of the strength, but strength isn't always force, right?
Right.
Strength can be calm, and so that's why I like, you could put a nail in, but you can also gently pull a nail out. There's all
Exactly.
those different things that you can do with
I
that.
I love what you say about the hammer to build up and to take things down. That's such a powerful image, right? With one
Yeah,
tool, you could make it a really positive thing, and then it could also be really negative, like destroying something,
yeah.
and it's your choice of what you want to do with it. It's
Yeah,
really beautiful.
absolutely. And sometimes the things we can take apart or destroy are bad things. So even the tearing down can be so. But yeah, it's like it's amazing,
But it
right?
could be good
That
too. Destroying
right,
something could
right.
also be good. So it like
Yeah,
just depends
exactly,
on how you want to interpret
exactly.
it and what
Yeah,
you need.
yeah.
That's really
So
cool.
I think that's and people will ask me about it, and then I love when people ask me about it, because that conversation in and of itself, building and taking down, and again, because you can build positive things and negative things, you can take down positive things and negative things. There's all these different, you find out a lot by the way people frame that conversation about building and taking down. What is important to them, what experiences is in their life, right? Because you automatically, when you hear that, start to talk about examples of things that you would either like to build or take down, or things where things have been built or taken down. And I think that that says a lot about what a person's priority is, what a person's priorities are, or where they're at emotionally at that particular time. So I think that that's cool
Yeah.
too when I have conversations with people about it and kind of hear what are the examples that they're going to, use as part of that.
What a great
Um,
conversation starter or question to ask people to
yeah,
kind of
right.
see where their framework is. And, instead of like, is the glass half full or half empty? It's a
Right.
little more, it's deeper because there's so many
Nuanced.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like
It's
what
really
are you going
cool.
to do with a hammer? What would you do with a
Yeah.
hammer, right? Yeah.
That's a
That should be
great question.
it's like a one of those Rorschach tests, but instead of an image, it's like here's a hammer. What are you going to do with this? What's the first thing
Yeah.
you're going to do?
Yeah.
So strength. So I love that that's a powerful one to you, and I think let's talk a little bit about, because I know that we have. So some of the questions are going to be questions I actually know the answer to, but I want to revisit because I think they're cool. So the journey that you took from, like you talked about, you were, doing business stuff, and you moved into the jewelry making, and what that process was like for you, because in many ways that was almost like you being shaped into a specific
For
image, into a
sure.
specific piece, right? There was a lot of melding that was going on in your life in order for you to kind of
Absolutely.
find the image that was going to be best for you to take shape. So what was that like for you?
So, I've always been a creative person my entire life, as a kid. And back in the day, my parents were like, no, you can't go to art school. No, you got to be practical. So I went and did practical things and had a practical job. But over the years, I just found that my soul was dying. I was not fulfilled, even though I was very successful. I had a very successful sales career, but it just wasn't feeding me. So I went back to who I was at that time, and I just said, "Oh, I need to have a creative outlet." So I just started. I don't know why, but I was drawn to metalsmithing. And if you ask any jeweler, it's like it's an addiction when you get that torch and you're soldering things and you're melting things, and it's an adrenaline high when you start doing that. And I just became addicted. And so that was my journey. And I just started making things for all my friends. And my one friend, I think, got tired of me giving her so much jewelry. So she said, let's have a trunk show at my house. We'll invite all our friends. And I know you can sell your jewelry. And I was like, oh, I don't know. Okay. So it was so much fun. Everybody came out to support me. And I sold 68 pieces that day from that one trunk show. And then she hits me
Wow.
and she goes, see, I told you. And I went, well, everyone's just buying it because they want to be my friend, right? I mean, because they're my friend, they want to support me. So it just inspired me. And after that, I applied for a wholesale show, and there was a really long waiting list. So I said, I'm just going to apply and maybe I'll get on the waiting list. And in 4 years, I'll get into the show. And I applied and I got in. And so that's how the whole business started. And like you said, it's molded me and shaped me. It's built my confidence. It's taught me how to be my own advocate. Um, and it's really changed over the years. And in the beginning, I think one of the hardest things about having your own business is when you price something and somebody wants to buy it, and asking for the money is really hard. It's really, really hard. And and there were times where people had promised to pay me and they didn't. And it really taught me that it's not personal. I made these things, I invested in it, and I deserve to be paid. So you have to just go after it. And so it taught me how to ask for things that I wasn't always so good at. And the transition has happened is in the beginning, I was a little bit more timid. Then I got more firm. And now I've learned how to ask for things a little bit better, where I'm firm but not aggressive. And I think
Mm.
that's the hardest line, is figuring out how to ask for what you want or ask for what you deserve without being overly in your face. You can ask for it gently, but still people know that this is the line, you need to do this. So that's been kind of my journey with my jewelry.
Well, and that's just entrepreneurship in general, right? Is
Right.
that idea, and the thing that that I'm sure you do this too. I have to remind myself because there are times where I would just like to help a bunch of people and not charge anything, but it's not sustainable. So it's not even like, so there's two levels to it. Certainly you want to make sure that you're getting appropriately compensated for the time and energy from a value perspective, right? You do want people to recognize like I'm really making a difference for, in your life, and that, so there is that component,
Right.
but also it's just not sustainable.
Right.
If maybe in a different world, if everybody was bartering and trading their services and products, that would be great, but we're not set up that way. And so I'm not going to be able to help anybody if I try to help everybody without any
Ex-
compensation. And that's the same thing.
exactly.
You can't buy your supplies. The jewelry's going to stop getting made because you're going to run
Exactly.
out of money. So
Exactly.
and I think too that there's probably, particularly in this case, I know on a smaller scale, like even with the merchandise, I started doing that You Matter stuff, right? And
Yeah, that's
people
great.
will talk about the pricing, and I think like there's a baseline cost to the product. So like what's
Mhm.
being charged isn't what you're making.
Right.
It's what you have to pay plus a little bit so that you're going to make a profit. So you're buying all those materials. People aren't just paying you for your time, they're also compensating for the materials
For
that you've
them.
had to purchase to make that stuff. But I think that a lot of times we forget that. Even when we go to the grocery store, we forget that.
Right.
So I think that that's a piece that we have to kind of remind people of in a way
Right.
that's, like you said, firm. You don't want to be aggressive, but you do want to make people understand that this is it. And
Yeah. Yeah.
ultimately you hope that people are listening.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think I really learned from my journey as an entrepreneur and designing is, the jewelry industry is very competitive. There's a million people who are makers and stuff. And really, what helped me, what I learned about myself designing jewelry is to follow my own vision and my own design aesthetic and stay true to that because I didn't I and not copy or not be influenced by other outside things. And finding your own voice and your own vision is really hard. It took me a long time to really hone in on it. And now I feel very strong about it. So I can, sometimes I go a little off track, but I know who I am in my design aesthetic. And it's hard when you're first learning to figure out who you are when you're designing because you see you take classes and you're being influenced by so many people. And that was probably one of the hardest things for me to learn is figuring out who I am as a designer and an artist.
Yeah, right. And I thought that's, and to your point, that's the designer's journey, that's the musician's journey. Anybody, you want
Exactly.
to allow yourself to experience other things so that you do see where what places you lean into, but you always want to make sure that the influence is just enough to help you understand yourself, and then you let it
Yes.
flow. Right.
Yes.
And I like think about that like I'm not I don't can't play a lot of I can't play a lot of chords on the guitar. I can play enough that there's, I can do things with it and stuff. And so there'll be a song that I'll hear, and maybe it's got like chord changes. I just right now, maybe I could, maybe I couldn't. I don't know. Carpal tunnel syndrome does, things to your wrists, but like I'm like, there's no. I right now I cannot play that song that fast. So you start to play kind of your own little versions of songs, and that's like you hear musicians on the radio all the time who do covers and they do remakes of things and stuff. So it's like that's very much that thing. It's like taking that particular melody or those notes or those words and turning them into something that's very different than it was originally.
Hmm.
So you're using some of those practices and techniques that have been used by jewelry makers for I'm not even sure how many years, right?
Right.
But
Right.
when you're folding that piece of metal or rolling that piece of metal, I'm not sure what the appropriate term you would use for that is,
It's
but
both. Yeah.
okay. So when you're doing that, it's got your technique in it, and then it's going to come out in the way that you like it, and then that helps you with the placement of where am I going to put this particular jewel and stuff like that. And
Exactly.
it's cool.
Yeah.
It says so much about you when you look at it. You're like, oh, all right, that's me. That's me right there. That's my
Yeah, and
story.
you know what? It's really hard. Another lesson I learned while being on this journey is when I first learned, I thought there was only one way to do everything. And as the years have come along, I mean, just even soldering, like soldering two pieces like a join together, there's so many different ways to do it. And when I first learned, I thought there was only one way. And I remember doing it when I was first learning it. I did it a particular way that wasn't what the teacher had taught, the instructor had taught. And then I thought, well, maybe I did it wrong and it's not going to work. But it really it taught me that you don't have to do it exactly as taught, and it doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just that's what works for you. And I think that was really empowering to know that I can do it my way and it'll still work. So
Yeah.
that was fun too, learning that.
That's a life lesson right there, right?
Right, for sure. For
Take
sure.
the wisdom from others, but you also can uncover and create your own steps forward and maneuver through your own way.
Mhm. For
So,
sure. For
yeah,
sure.
I love it. I love it. What is maybe thinking back over, because I know like you don't want to pick your favorite piece, but has there been a time or an experience where you were doing something you discovered some new way to do, maybe like that, the soldering, but like you discovered a new way to do something or you discovered a new design that you can think back to that you were like, "Oh, that's unexpected. That's really cool. I like the way that turned out."
Yeah, I had a cathartic moment, maybe a year and a half ago. I had been wanting to do this. I had been wanting to make a love talisman for a very long time, but I didn't want it to be just a heart-shaped thing, and I wasn't sure how to do it. And yeah, you talk about like how do I get inspired? I had gone to therapy that morning, and I had a really intense therapy session. And when I came out, I don't know, I said, "I just need to go to the studio and work." And it was just this amazing experience. I don't even know what happened. My hands just kinda did all these things and blah, 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 and everything, and I created this love talisman, and then I sat down and because each one of the talisman, there's a little story around it, and it was like it turned out so beautiful, even better than I ever imagined, and then I wrote down this whole story about it, and so, um how it was just such a great experience, and it was so inspiring to myself that I had to share the story. And the thing about the love talisman was I wanted it to represent love, but not just romantic love, because when you
Mhm.
think about the heart, everybody always thinks it's about romantic love. And so this heart is battered. It's very organic in shape. It's not perfect. It's got a lot of bumps and stuff on it, and there's a little diamond on it to have some sparkle. And so the story really was about how love has many shapes and forms, and that we have to celebrate all the bumps and imperfections and the traumas and the beauty and all our battle wounds, because that's what makes it so beautiful, right? And that's what happened when I went to this therapy session. We had this deep discussion about all that. And it was just amazing how it just was this catalyst to make this whole thing, this
Mhm.
physical thing come from that. And that was probably one of the most beautiful design experiences I've had in recent years. So,
That's beautiful. Well, and I love the idea behind it, both from a perspective of it being love in all of its many shapes and sizes and all the different ways that it can apply, and that it encompasses the hard stuff, as part of that. There's a poem I wrote called Graffiti Heart, and the concept of it is that, when you see graffiti on a wall, right, it can either be like, oh, that's graffiti, it's messing up the wall. But a lot of times the graffiti is beautiful, this beautiful artwork,
so
right? And that's the
beautiful.
concept of that all the experiences that we've been in our life have left this graffiti on our heart, that these messages that
Yeah,
are always going to be there. And you could look at it as worn out because it's got all this graffiti on it, or you could look at it as really beautiful and magnificent and decorated, depending on the perspective of it. And that's that heart that you
exactly.
created, right? It's got all of those dings and dents can also be things that you can hold on to, physically hold on to in your hand, and you can feel them, right? And it
Hmm.
provides that sense of calm. And that's what our lives are, a bunch of dings and dents and incredible, amazing things. And all of them at the end of the day lead to conversations like this, where under different circumstances we might never have met, but we're able to have a conversation today and talk about these things and feed into each other's souls. So
Right. And,
that's
and,
really
and
cool.
Yeah, and and that's the whole point of the love thing is at the end of the day, we all want to connect. We all want to be loved, right? And that was the whole point of this talisman, is like, how do we find ways to connect with each other and to celebrate ourselves and celebrate who we are with others, and find that love, whether it's a friendship or romantic love or familial love. It's all of that. And it's a really good reminder, and that the most important love is yourself, right? You have to have your self
Right.
love before you can share yourself with other people. So, yeah, who thought jewelry would be so deep?
It is. I do. I mean, I think about that. I think it's there's so many levels to jewelry when you think about it. What colors you like, what sizes you like, how often do you wear it? Do you like necklaces or earrings, right? There's so
Mhm.
many different things that decisions that come into what jewelry you decide to purchase and what jewelry you decide to wear on any given day. So it does have a lot of different levels to it, right? Do you wear this bright, sparkly, shiny one? Do you wear something that's different? We
Right?
talked about, our mutual friend Brittany mentioning the mixed metals, right? I mean, like, I love that about it, that it's not because we're so multifaceted. And I've always
Exactly.
enjoyed that. Like, I've always enjoyed jewelry that had, the both colors, because I'm like, I don't want to pick silver or gold or bronze
Right.
or, rose. I want
Right.
to, like, I just want to look at
Have
the
it
jewelry
all.
itself. Yeah, like, why does it have to be and certain times obviously I might lean one way or the other, but again, I think that, like, that the mixing of all those different things together. So, yeah, beautiful. I hope that people I'm confident that some will. I hope that many people check out your
Oh, thank
stuff
you.
online, and you've got some really nice stuff displayed. And why don't you tell everybody, like, what is the best way for people to get in touch with you, to check out your what you've
Um,
created?
yeah, I have my own website, so it's just Chikahisa Studio. So it's my last name, and you can check it out on the website, and then follow me on Instagram, which is also Chikahisa Studio. And I'm also on Facebook, but I'm most active on Instagram. So, yeah.
Excellent. So they can follow you there, message you there, find out more
Hmm.
about ways to purchase some of your items. And obviously, your
Yeah.
website is pretty
And I have a
comprehensive.
Yeah, thank you. I do have, like, if you're interested in the talisman, I do have a quiz on my website, and there's a link on Instagram as well, which could help you find your perfect piece, because it can be a little overwhelming. A lot of people will go and they're like, oh, where do I start? So I created a quiz, which will it's only 3 questions. It takes like 5 seconds, and it'll just give you a starting place of where you can start collecting your talisman. So it's fun.
Yeah, excellent. All right. Parting words for whomever is watching us now, whether it's live or we'll watch it later. What is a final message you would like to give to everybody?
My final message is it's never too late to reinvent yourself. And there's something you want to do, or you have a passion that you want to pursue, or you want to make some change in your life, just take those steps and do it. I reinvented myself in my mid 40s, and so it's a forever evolving thing. So I encourage anyone to do it. It's just never too late. So don't let that limit your progress moving forward,
Beautiful. Yeah, I like that piece of metal, right? Can be reshaped with the right
and melted
hands.
down and reused, and come out something new.
Beautiful. I thank you for taking the time to talk today. I
Oh my
enjoyed
God.
this very
Thank
much.
thank you, Deb. It's been really, really fun chatting with you, as always. I love
Yeah,
chatting with
just
you.
exactly. Absolutely. I'm sure this isn't the last time. And thank you again, everybody that's joined us. We hope that you have a wonderful rest of the day, and reach out to Anne and find out about more of how you can take a look at the stuff that she's got. Take care,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.